wanted to share with you a little experiment that I've been running on myself for the past few weeks. After Inktober finished, I realized, as I do every year, that my inking isn't quite where I want it to be. My line control isn't as good as I want it to be, especially when I'm using inks. And I'm not really sure why that is. I think partially it is because I am using ink and I know that it is permanent. So I'm either going too slow, or I know in my head, I think, oh yeah, you're not very good at this, so I go too fast. And so my lines are a little bit wobbly, or I can't get really nice parallel lines or whatever. So I decided to do an experiment on myself where I did a Zentangle, 1 or 2 or 3 Zentangles every day for 30 days to see if that would help improve my line quality. To start with, I did a little test of where I felt like my line quality was, and I'm looking for that right here. So I decided to do parallel lines pulling down, pushing up, side to side, angled lines in all different directions, and then try to do kind of squiggly lines and then ovals as well, just so that I could have a baseline of where I started. And then at the end of the 30 days, I am also going to do this same baseline test as well and see if I have made any sort of improvement, I have learned anything about my line control. I decided on Zentangles because I know that there's a lot of repeating patterns, a lot of parallel lines and things like that in them, and I felt like it would be a good way to help me just kind of learn to do that line control and get that consistency of line, consistency of spacing, etc., etc. So I first started off doing larger boxes every day, and you can see some of these here. And then I decided that I didn't really want to fill up my entire sketchbook with a bunch of these Zentangles, because overall I just didn't want that in my sketchbook. I didn't want my sketchbook to be full of these large Zentangles and then a few little doodles here and there. So instead, I made myself a nice big grid here that I am filling in. And like I said, I'm doing 2 to 3 a day, working with the same pen every time. It might be interesting for me to try this again with a different type of pen, or if I decide that this isn't as helpful as I want it to be, maybe I'll try a different exercise. But the pen that I'm using is the Tamo Funosuke pen, which has a really nice kind of flexible nib on it. It's a kind of a plastic nib, but you can get a lot of line weight variety with it. I would love to hear from you guys exercises that you do in order to improve your line control as well. I have talked to my niece, who is a tattoo artist, and she does practice kind of just pulling lines, and I did that for a short while, but it got really boring, which is why I decided to try Zentangles, because it was at least a lot less boring than just drawing parallel lines and drawing circles and drawing ovals and that sort of thing. So I felt like doing the Zentangles was going to be a little bit more engaging for me, and it has been, because when I go to do them, I just kind of flip through and try and find some patterns that I want to do that look interesting, and then I do those. So it is more engaging, which means that I'm going to be able to do it more, which hopefully means that I'll be able to improve more. I'm also hoping that by doing this, I will get over the fear of just going straight in with pen. I have heard the advice that you should just go straight in with pen and do some drawings. That way it'll really build up your confidence. But I have a fear that's stopping me from going in with pen straight away. Quite often, I feel like I have to do the undersketch first and then go in with pen afterwards. I do think that my inking over top of my sketches has improved over the years, which is awesome. But like I said, I'm hoping that this will help me not only improve my line quality, but also help me get over that fear of going in straight with pen, because I am going in straight with pen with all these Zentangles. I am not doing undersketch first and then going back over with pen, because I don't want that I don't want the sketch to help me out. I want to build up that line confidence with the pen rather than having the kind of support of the underlying sketch. Before starting this experiment, I wasn't a huge fan of doing Zentangles or Zentangles in general. Not that I had anything against them. I just was like, whatever, it's not really my thing. It's still not exactly my thing, but I am enjoying doing them in that it is a nice kind of time for me to just quiet down and have my mind quiet and focus on something really small. The other nice thing that I think it has done for me is given me something to do in my sketchbook that doesn't require a lot of thought, which will get me into my sketchbook and get me drawing, which then can lead to me doing other sketches in my sketchbook because I've already kind of started doing a thing. And I know that for me, that's the biggest hurdle to doing art is getting started. I am never sure what I want to do, or even when I know what I want to do, there's like that just kind of barrier that I have to get through to get started. So quite often I find other ways to get me kind of started on something where like maybe I'll come downstairs and just clean up my art room, which gets me started and gets me in the mood to create. Or I'll do something like the other day I came down and I found a couple of little canvas squares and I primed those and got those ready to paint on because I had some leftover paint anyway and I wanted to use that up. So I was like, hey, let me just use that to put like a nice tone layer on there. And now those panels are ready for me to paint on whenever I feel like, which is kind of getting over that first hurdle of starting. And then after I did that, then I worked on another thing where I was playing in my sketchbook, learning how to paint fire. So anything that you can do to kind of help you get over that hurdle of getting started, do it. Even if it's not something that you're like, I don't really like the look of Zentangles or whatever, or I just don't really enjoy whatever, find something that you don't mind doing that can kind of get you into it and get you started. Hopefully that'll help you get over that hurdle of getting started, because I know for me, usually the thing is I'm not sure what I want to do, so it makes it hard to get started. So these are my day one lines. You can see that overall the line quality isn't too bad. I've got fairly straight lines regardless of the direction in which I am trying to draw them. I do end up with some kind of issues with kind of keeping them parallel to one another here and there throughout the whole thing. And, even like with the little S curves here, in general, it's not too bad. My ovals, I know I need to work on my ovals, that sort of thing. And then on the last day, let me try and find that. Here we are. I did the same line control test. I gave myself a little bit larger boxes, and that may have had something to do with it. And I had nice straighter lines, although my boxes I drew freehand so that they weren't completely straight. And I think overall, I think my consistency is much better. I think that my spacing is much more consistent. I'm not having lots of wobbles for the most part. And like in particular, this set of lines here, I was able to go a lot thinner on the lines than I typically am able to do with the Tombow Fudenosuke pen. I did have trouble with drawing lines from the bottom right to the top left. They definitely got really wobbly, and my first thought was it was because I was kind of drawing from off the side of the page and then onto the page. So I made myself a sticky note and tried to do that by putting the sticky note on the table and trying it again. And for sure, that's still kind of wobbly. I had a hard time kind of keeping them going nice and straight up. So that's just an awkward angle for me. And so that's kind of something nice to know. I practice my ovals. I think they're slightly better than they were at the beginning. And my S curves, I felt like, especially at the beginning here, I was able to keep them nice and parallel without kind of deviating too much from the S itself. I did end up kind of deviating a little bit. But overall, I do think that there was improvement from day 1 to day 30. Overall, I think this was a really interesting test to do on myself, and I may end up doing something like this again, just kind of dedicating a page to some Zentangles or doodles or something like that, so that I'll have something to just kind of play with while I'm working in my sketchbook, so that I don't have to think too much about what I'm going to draw in there, and hopefully that'll kind of get me drawing other things in there more, and also it will help me just improve my line quality. I may try it with pencil instead of pen, or I may continue using pen. I may try different pens. I may try doing something like this with a paintbrush. That would be interesting to kind of get better control with my paintbrush in terms of doing nice straight lines, or particularly curved lines like circles and things like that. I know that my control with a paintbrush for doing things like that could use some improvement, so that would be an interesting experiment to do. Just kind of grab some paint, like some cheap watercolor or something like that, and do this sort of exercise as well. I think I said earlier that if you guys have other ideas of ways that you like to do, or ways that you have heard to kind of improve your line quality, improve your consistency of line, let me know, because I would be interested in trying out some different exercises, because it gets a little bit boring doing the same thing over and over, which is why I did the Zentangles, because just drawing lines is pretty boring. Anyway, I hope that this was interesting for you guys, enlightening. Maybe you'll try it. If you do, let me know, and I guess I will see you guys next week. Bye!